So we will claim that the main elements, the key elements in a narrative are the following: orientation, conflict resolution, and evaluation. And we will focus our attention on the kind of evaluation that we will encounter in Wakefield. More specifically, I would like to focus on the fact that in the second paragraph of the story, we learn that the narrator makes reference to the abstract when he claims that this outline is all that I remember. The outline in question is the abstract that we have already discussed. He also makes reference to the incident, that is the conflict, by means of expressions like the story, the incident, a folly. He's making reference to the acts, the actions that Wakefield has perpetrated. Expressions such as Wakefield's vagary also make reference to what he has done, and the phrase immortal and the final sentence make reference to, as we will see in the last paragraph, the moral or the message of the story. So what kind of evaluation do we have here? It's not any kind of evaluation. This is evaluation of fiction by fiction. That is, the story makes assessments, or the narrator of the story makes assessments on the fiction or the narrative on the story itself. That is basically what we call metafiction, and we can refer to these comments as metafictional comments. So the narrator is not simply telling the story. He's making reference to the fact that the story is made up of such events. Notice also that the narrator refers to himself or herself, or themselves, in first person. We hear that this outline is all I remember, and I think, and to my own contemplations. With me, I bid him welcome. So there is a clear reference to the presence of the narrator in the narrative. Hence, the metafictional nature of Wakefield as a story that is talking about the writing of a story. We also learn that apart from the narrator invites the reader or narratee, that is the potential reader, to take part in the narrative. Hence he goes, we know, each for himself, that none of us will perpetrate such a folly, yet we feel as if some other might. Then the narrator mentions the presence of the reader in the text itself. Then the narrator talks about the reader. If the reader chooses, let him do his own meditation. But if he, the reader, prefer to ramble with me, the narrator, through the 20 years of Wakefield's vagary, I bid him welcome. So there are explicit comments and an explicit representation of both the narrator and the narratee, the narrator and the potential reader in the story. We also learned that there are acts of criticism as far as the story is concerned, in expressions such as the incident, though of the purest originality, unexampled, probably never to be repeated. That event appeals to the generous sympathies of mankind. Must be true. The event must be true. The story must be true. And this event or this subject forcibly affects the mind. We also learn that time is well spent in thinking of it, thinking about the event, thinking about the reasons and the motives, or thinking about the reasons why Wakefield may have absented himself for such a long time. And again, there are evaluative comments on the model. There will be a prevailing spirit and a model done up neatly and condensed into the final sentence, where final sentence is a literal statement about the fact that by the end of the story we will learn that, like Wakefield, he may become, as it were, the outcast of the universe. So anyone who happens to commit the crimes that Wakefield has committed, let us bear in mind that the narrator has characterized the conflict and Wakefield's banishment as an act of marital delinquency. Anyone who commits those crimes, who performs those acts, should be considered an outcast of the universe. And let us move on to the next paragraph, where the narrator again makes explicit reference to the character. And he invites us to reflect upon the following question: what sort of a man was Wakefield? We are free to shape out our own idea and call it by its name. And we learn that we are free, in response to this question, we learn that we are free to shape out our own idea and call it by its name. Next paragraph. Let us now imagine, notice the constant reference to both the narrator and the narratee. Let us now imagine. And then we get into the narrative. Imagine what? Wakefield bidding adieu, saying goodbye to his wife. And in the last paragraph, I'm skipping paragraphs. You're kindly invited, of course, to analyze the text. I have just focused my attention on the abstract, the first paragraph and the second paragraph. And now I will discuss the last paragraph. This happy event, well, that's basically an ironical statement. Hence, the parenthetical, supposing it to be such, could only have occurred at an unpremeditated moment. And then we, the narrator and the narratee, will now follow our friend across the threshold. He has left us, again, narrator and narratee, much food for thought, a portion of which shall lend its wisdom to the moral. Again, the insistence on the fact that there is a moral, there is a message. And here's the message. Amid the seeming confusion of our mysterious world, individuals are so nicely adjusted to a system, and systems to one another and to a whole, that by stepping aside for a moment, a man exposes himself to a fearful risk of losing his place forever. Like Wakefield, he may become, as it were, the outcast of the universe. So, it is clear that Wakefield is a story about a story, where the narrator comments on the writing of the story, on the elements of the story, on the narrator himself. The narrator comments on the narrator himself. The narrator makes reference to the reader, to the actions, to the ending, to the moral, to the message, in a very, very explicit fashion. Hence, our characterization of Wakefield as metafiction. There is fiction that talks about fiction, a story that is being written, as it were, as we read it, or a story where we can perceive the process of writing as we read and interpret the story. So we're not simply told what happened. We are told what happened and we are invited to reflect upon the process of writing, the origin of the story, the fact that the story may or may not be true, the fact that the conflict is a crime, is an act of marital delinquency, etc., etc., etc. Or, as we have already mentioned, the fact that by doing this, there is a message, there is a moral. Soon we will analyze other stories and we will notice that not all stories are constantly making explicit references to the story itself. Well, I hope you have enjoyed the analysis and I will be seeing you soon. Bye-bye.